This chronicle unfolds the chilling descent of Christina Formella, pieced together through police interrogations, judicial records, digital correspondences, and heart-rending testimonies gathered between March and June 2025.
Christina? Okay, Christina, do me a favor, can you step out of the car for me? I know you're confused, I'll explain everything to you. Oh, I have to put you in handcuffs and bring you to the police department. Just a Downers Road. Yes, unfortunately, yes.
I'm like willing to go with you.
I get it, yeah. Unfortunately, we have to do it that way.
Am I in trouble? Like, I'm so lost right now. I'm
gonna put your seatbelt on. Unless they're able to reach it down there. Sure you don't want a tissue or something?
I'm feeling I'm gonna throw up.
Want a bag?
Yes, please.
Alright.
In September 2020, Downers Grove South High School proudly introduced their newest special education instructor. At just 25, Christina Formella appeared to be everything the district could hope for: bright-eyed, energetic, and devoted to helping students who needed extra support. She carried the right credentials, a degree in special education, and the kind of warmth that put anxious parents at ease. Students trusted her, parents praised her, and administrators viewed her as a rising star. But beneath the surface, they had unknowingly welcomed a predator. Over the next 3 years, Formella crafted a flawless image. She volunteered whenever help was needed, assisted with after-school programs, even coached the girls' soccer team. She offered extra study sessions to struggling students and quickly became the teacher family specifically requested for children with learning challenges. One parent later told investigators, "My daughter couldn't keep up in most classes, but Christina made her believe she could now. I realize it was the perfect disguise." By early 2023, Formella had already chosen her victim, a 14-year-old boy enrolled in her special education program. He was academically behind, emotionally vulnerable, and eager for validation from any adult who showed him kindness. She began grooming him with meticulous precision. At first, everything seemed harmless: more attention in class, offers to stay after school, small comments that boosted his confidence, and text messages that began about homework but slowly drifted into personal territory. "She made me feel like I mattered," the boy later revealed to investigators. What looked like a caring teacher supporting a struggling student was actually a predator, eroding boundaries one step at a time. The first boundary was professional teachers aren't permitted to use personal phones to communicate with students, yet she justified it as necessary for his success. The second boundary became emotional. She shifted conversations from academics to his personal worries, positioning herself as the only adult who truly understood him. The final boundary she shattered was physical.
She said she was going to take your family for millions and then be with this child after he graduated high school.
What transpired next would linger in the minds of investigators for many years. The assault that occurred in December 2023 was not merely a singular event of poor judgment. It marked the onset of a systematic campaign of sexual abuse that would last nearly 2 years and irrevocably damage a child's innocence. Court documents disclose the horrifying extent of Formella's offenses. From January 2023 to September 2024, she sexually abused her victim. Approximately 50 times 45 of those incidents took place at school during school hours, with 5 additional occurrences at her own residence. Let that resonate. A trusted educator exploited her position of authority to sexually assault a child 50 times while being compensated by taxpayers to safeguard and educate him. However, the frequency of the abuse is only a fraction of the horror. The calculated nature of Formella's crimes unveils a predator who was acutely aware of her actions. She meticulously recorded details about the victim in the notes application on her phone. When initially interrogated by law enforcement, she attempted to assert that these notes were merely outlets for her anxiety. Yet, when confronted with the explicit sexual content, she conceded that the notes pertained to the victim, not her husband. She chronicled her offenses. She orchestrated her assaults. She arranged her abuse around school activities and her personal life. The text message evidence presented in court unveils the disturbing dynamic that Formella fostered. "I love having sex with you," she texted to a boy who had begun as her 14-year-old student. The victim, groomed and manipulated, responded with intricate descriptions of their encounters. These were not love letters exchanged between consenting adults. Instead, they were documented communications between a sexual predator and her child victim. The abuse intensified in both frequency and audacity. What began as isolated incidents within her classroom expanded to her home. She invited a child child to her residence, the same home she shared with her fiancé, and sexually abused him there. The psychological manipulation was as devastating as the physical abuse. Formella persuaded the victim that their relationship was unique, asserting that he was advanced for his age and that their actions were both normal and consensual. She distanced him from any potential support networks. She instilled a sense of complicity in him regarding the abuse. She exploited his natural adolescent confusion surrounding sexuality to exert control over him. She claimed that I was unlike other children my age. The victim later disclosed that I was more mature and capable of managing an adult relationship. This exemplifies typical predator behavior. Formella was not a bewildered adult making unwise decisions. She was a calculated abuser employing advanced psychological manipulation strategies to retain access to her victim. The most disturbing element of the abuse was how Formella compartmentalized her existence. By day, she was sexually assaulting a child. By night, she was organizing her wedding to her college sweetheart, Michael. August 2024. While she was actively abusing her student victim, Christina Formella walked down the aisle in a white gown, vowing to love, honor, and cherish her new spouse. The wedding photographs capture a glowing bride beaming and enjoying moments with her new husband. What those images fail to reveal is that mere hours before or after those snapshots were taken, she might have been strategizing her next assault on a child.
I understand what's going on here. I get it, yeah. You can go grab your things.
Can he come with me?
Yes, yes. You stay there for right now, sir. Just stay there, but yes, you can. But come on back here.
Should I shut the car off?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Goes off. Okay. Let's right back over here. So, we do have an investigation going on. We have to talk to you about it at the police department, okay? So we're going to explain everything to you there. It's not my investigation. I don't know the full details. We do have to bring you there, though, okay? So I do have to put you in handcuffs and bring you to the police department. Just a down
Handcuffs?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
I'm like willing to go with you.
I get it, yeah. Unfortunately, we have to do it that way. So do me a favor. We just take this off.
Can I ask you
Of course, yeah. It's not, like I said, it's not my investigation. Obviously, we're here for a reason. So go ahead and turn around for me. So right now, you're just being detained, and there is a detective that needs to talk to you at the police department. So we'll let your husband know. He can just come to the police department as well if he wants to wait for you there.
I'm like...
I get it. You have a lot of questions.
So scared.
Yeah, everything's okay. We just need to talk to you at the police department. That's all. Nothing else on your pocket right now? Anything else?
Just my phone.
Just your phone?
Here.
Okay. Okay. All right, we're heading to sit in the back of this car. On the other side. Once you get to the police department, you'll talk to the detective and he'll explain everything to you.
After a ride to the police department and questioning by detectives, police said Christina Formella made some inconsistent statements and blamed the student, at one point calling him a stalker. They also found notes on her phone that they said showed she was obsessed with the teenage boy. They then took her to jail.
Just when one believes they have encountered the most appalling aspects of Christina Formella's offenses, the evidence unveils an even more unsettling reality regarding her ability to deceive and manipulate. While she was systematically abusing her student victim, Formella was concurrently constructing a life with her husband, Michael. She orchestrated a wedding, nurtured friendships, and continued her teaching career, all the while executing a nearly 2-year campaign of child sexual abuse. The psychological compartmentalization necessary for such a degree of deception is astonishing. Most individuals find it challenging to uphold minor lies for brief durations. However, Formella sustained a colossal deception that permeated every facet of her life for 600 days. She misled her husband about working late when, in fact, she was abusing her victim at school. She deceived her colleagues regarding her relationship with the student. She provided false information to administrators about her after-school activities. She she misrepresented to parents the reasons for giving their children's classmates excessive individual attention. Yet, perhaps most chillingly, she deceived herself. The diary entries discovered on Formella's phone expose a woman who had fabricated an intricate fantasy to rationalize her crimes. She did not perceive herself as a predator victimizing a child. In her distorted perspective, she was engaged in a relationship with someone who comprehended her. When the abuse was ultimately uncovered, Formella's initial reaction was not one of remorse or accountability. Instead, it was to shift the blame onto the victim. She informed the police that the 15-year-old boy was her stalker. She asserted that he had pursued her and that she was the victim of his advances. She attempted to depict a child whom she had begun grooming at the age of 14 as the aggressor in his own sexual abuse. This victim-blaming tactic is prevalent among female predators, yet it is particularly nefarious when the victim is a child with learning disabilities who was specifically targeted due to his vulnerability and whom she had been grooming since he was 14 years old. The evidence entirely contradicted Formella's assertions. Text messages indicated that she was the one to initiate contact. Her personal notes disclosed her planning and recording of the abuse. Testimonies from witnesses corroborated that she had orchestrated situations to be alone with the victim. However, what troubled investigators the most was how Formella had skillfully manipulated those around her to facilitate her abuse. She persuaded school administrators that the victim required additional assistance and that she was the most qualified individual to provide it. She organized private tutoring sessions that allowed her unsupervised access to him. She leveraged her reputation as a committed teacher to deflect any inquiries regarding the amount of time she spent with a specific student. She even manipulated her husband Michael. When he inquired about text messages from students, she dismissed them as part of her professional responsibilities. When he observed her working late or returning home at unusual hours, she attributed it to her commitment to aiding struggling students. Michael Formella informed investigators that he was unaware of the victim beyond his role as a soccer player. His wife had effectively concealed a 2-year sexual relationship with a minor from the person who was closest to her. The revelations that investigators subsequently uncovered would astonish the entire Downers Grove community. In January 2025, a mother residing in Downers Grove was assisting her son in setting up his new phone when she stumbled upon a revelation that would unveil one of the most alarming teacher abuse cases in the history of Illinois. While she was accessing her son's iCloud account to transfer data, she discovered text messages that sent chills down her spine. These were explicit conversations between her 15-year-old son and his special education teacher, Christina Formella. The messages were not merely inappropriate, they constituted evidence of ongoing sexual abuse. One message from Formella to the child stated, "I love having sex with you." The responses disclosed intimate details of their encounters, both at school and at Formella's residence. The mother promptly alerted the police. Within a few hours, investigators began constructing a case that would ultimately lead to 55 felony charges against the trusted educator. However, what transpired next unveiled the true magnitude of Formella's manipulation and the devastating repercussions of her actions. When confronted by investigators, Formella's initial reaction was denial, followed by deflection and victim blaming. She cycled through every tactic that predators employ when apprehended, except for the one that might have demonstrated genuine remorse and acceptance of responsibility. She asserted that the explicit text messages had been taken out of context. She maintained that the victim had pursued her. She even proposed that her notes regarding the abuse were fictional, merely creative writing exercises intended to cope with stress. Detective Sarah Martinez, who conducted the initial interview, later characterized Formella's demeanor as chillingly calm and calculating. There were no tears, no signs of guilt or shame, only a systematic effort to downplay her crimes and shift the blame onto a child. She exhibited more emotion when discussing the potential impact of the investigation on her teaching career than when addressing the harm she inflicted upon the victim, as noted by Detective Martinez in her report. The investigation rapidly broadened as detectives recognized the extensive nature of the abuse. What initially seemed to be a series of inappropriate encounters was, in fact, a systematic pattern of sexual assault that lasted nearly 2 years. Search warrants executed on her phone and computer, unveiled the full scope of her documentation. The entries in her notes app, the diary entries that blamed the victim for destroying her relationship and marriage, and the meticulous records detailing when and where the abuse took place were all uncovered. However, perhaps the most unsettling discovery was what investigators learned about Formella's mindset during the abuse. Her diary entries depicted an individual who perceived herself as the victim in the situation she had orchestrated. "He ruined everything," she wrote regarding the boy she had been systematically abusing since he was 14. "Now my marriage is destroyed and my career is over because of him." The psychological manipulation was so profound that even after being apprehended, Formella was unable to recognize that she was a predator who had targeted and exploited a vulnerable child. On March 16, 2025, Christina Formella was arrested at her residence and charged with 3 initial felony counts of criminal sexual assault and aggravated criminal sexual abuse. However, investigators were only beginning their inquiry.
I'm just gonna put your seatbelt on, right? Unless are you able to reach it down there? Alright. Sure you don't want a tissue or something?
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
You want a bag?
Yes, please.
Alright. Shauna, can you grab like a bag out of there? Hey, can you get like a bag?
What initially appeared to be a simple case of teacher misconduct escalated into one of the most extensive prosecutions of a female predator in recent history. As investigators delved further into Formella's offenses, the evidence revealed a pattern of abuse that was both systematic and widespread, leading prosecutors to realize that the initial charges were merely the tip of the iceberg. On May 20th, 2025, a grand jury in DuPage County issued an indictment that astonished even the most experienced prosecutors. An additional 52 charges were incorporated into Formella's case, raising the total to 55 felony counts, which included 20 counts of criminal sexual assault, classified as Class 1 felonies with potential sentences ranging from 4 to 15 years each. Furthermore, there were 20 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, also Class 1 felonies, alongside 6 counts of indecent solicitation of a child and 6 counts of grooming. If found guilty on all charges, Christina Formella could face a maximum of 60 years in prison. Prosecutor Jacqueline McAndrew did not hold back in her characterization of the defendant, describing her as unbelievably manipulative and excessively controlling. She informed the court that Formella was aware of the wrongdoing of her actions. The prosecution advocated for pretrial detention, highlighting concerns regarding Formella's proximity to the high school and the potential danger she posed to other students. They depicted her as a predator who had successfully concealed her crimes for 2 years and could not be trusted to refrain from reoffending. However, Judge Mia McPhersonson rejected the request for detention, instead imposing stringent conditions. These included GPS monitoring, the surrender of her passport, prohibition of contact with minors except for supervised visits with family members, and a ban on accessing school property. This ruling incited outrage within the community. Parents expressed their disbelief that someone facing 55 felony charges for child sexual abuse could be allowed to return to the neighborhood where her offenses took place. "She lives just 10 minutes from the school where she abused that boy," one parent remarked to local news outlets. "How can we feel secure sending our children to school knowing she is out there?" The community's apprehensions were not without merit. Research indicates that individuals who prey on children exhibit significant rates of reoffending. Furthermore, Formella had shown a remarkable capacity to conceal her offenses while holding positions of trust and authority. However, the events that unfolded during Formella's court appearances would incite even greater controversy and viral interest. Rather than expressing remorse or shame, Formella attended each hearing hand in hand with her spouse Michael. The couple's overt displays of solidarity ignited outrage and disbelief across various various social media platforms. TikTok user Abby Blabby shared videos of Formella arriving at court alongside her husband, which amassed millions of views and ignited discussions regarding spousal loyalty in criminal matters. The footage depicted a woman who seemed confident and defiant rather than contrite for her offenses against a child. Twitter personality Colin Rugg further amplified the case with a viral thread. High school teacher Christina Formella, facing 52 additional charges, allegedly engaged in sexual relations with a boy at least 45 times, beginning when he was merely 14 years old. The post attracted hundreds of thousands of interactions and retweets. The public's response was immediate and overwhelmingly critical. In contrast to previous cases involving female educators and male students, there was no romanticization of the relationship. The public accurately recognized Formella's conduct as predatory abuse of a child. However, what investigators uncovered regarding the repercussions on the victim would ultimately prove to be even more harrowing than the crimes themselves. Subscribe to Mr. Owl now. We reveal the most disturbing female predators that mainstream media tends to overlook. Behind every statistic regarding child sexual abuse lies a human being whose life has been irrevocably changed by the actions of a predator. In the case of Christina Formella, that individual was a boy who placed his trust in his teacher to assist him in learning and developing. This boy became her target when he was merely 14 years old. Rather than nurturing his growth, she methodically shattered his innocence and sense of security. The victim impact statements submitted in court illustrate the harrowing repercussions of Formella's offenses. What she described as a relationship was perceived by the victim as confusion, shame, and trauma that will likely haunt him for the remainder of his life. Child psychologists who assessed the victim identified classic indicators of sexual abuse trauma. These included difficulties in trusting adults, challenges with academic performance, social withdrawal, and issues with comprehending appropriate boundaries in relationships. The victim has conveyed feelings of guilt and accountability for the abuse, as noted by Dr. Jennifer Walsh, an expert in child trauma. This response is typical among victims of sexual abuse, but it is particularly devastating when the abuser is someone in a position of authority and trust. The grooming tactics employed by Formella were characteristic of predatory behavior, designed to make the victim feel complicit in his own abuse. She persuaded him that he was special, mature, and capable of managing an adult relationship. She instilled in him a sense of being chosen and valued, while systematically breaching his boundaries and exploiting his vulnerability. The psychological ramifications extended beyond the immediate abuse. The victim had to grapple with the realization that his teacher, someone he admired and trusted, had been using him for her own sexual gratification while feigning concern for his education and well-being. Imagine being 15 years old and uncovering that the adult who made you feel intelligent and capable had actually been manipulating those feelings to exploit you since you were 14, explained Dr. Walsh. The betrayal of trust is as traumatic as the physical abuse itself. The family of the victim endured profoundly devastating repercussions. His mother felt a deep sense of guilt for failing to recognize the signs of abuse. His father grappled with anger and a sense of helplessness. The siblings faced the upheaval within their family and the intense public scrutiny surrounding the case. Our entire family has been shattered by her actions. The victim's mother expressed to investigators, "She didn't just harm my son, she harmed all of us." The family confronted the added trauma of their private ordeal becoming public knowledge. Court proceedings, media coverage, and discussions on social media meant that the victim's abuse was being examined and analyzed by strangers online. However, what exacerbated the pain was how Formella continued to victimize the child even after being apprehended. Her efforts to depict him as a stalker who had pursued her were not merely a legal tactic, they were psychologically damaging. She sought to convince the world that a child with learning disabilities, whom she had begun grooming at the age of 14, had somehow seduced and manipulated his adult teacher into a sexual relationship. This strategy of victim blaming is particularly detrimental as it reinforces the shame and guilt that victims of abuse already experience. It conveys the message that the child bore some responsibility for his own victimization. The truth, supported by overwhelming evidence, was precisely the contrary. Formella had identified a vulnerable student when he was merely 14, groomed him in a systematic manner, and exploited his trust and desire for adult approval to facilitate her abuse. What motivates a woman to systematically inflict harm on a child while upholding the appearance of a compassionate educator and devoted spouse? The case of Christina Formella provides unsettling insights into the mindset of female predators, challenging prevalent beliefs about women who engage in sexual offenses, in contrast to male predators who frequently resort to physical force or overt coercion. Female offenders like Formella generally depend on emotional manipulation and the exploitation of caregiving dynamics. They weaponize their perceived nurturing qualities against their victims. Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic psychologist with over 2 decades of experience studying female sex offenders, elucidates this pattern. Female predators often seek out children who are emotionally vulnerable or facing academic challenges. They present themselves as the supportive adult who comprehends and aids the child in ways that others do not. This was precisely Formella's approach. She recognized a student with learning disabilities who was struggling academically and yearning for adult validation. She became his champion, his advocate, his special friend, all while grooming him for abuse. Beginning when he was merely 14 years old, the psychological profile that arises from the evidence is chilling in its calculated nature. Formella was not acting impulsively or grappling with mental health issues. Instead, she was meticulously orchestrating and executing a campaign of abuse while successfully deceiving those around her. Her capacity for compartmentalization is particularly alarming. She could engage in sexual abuse within her classroom and subsequently attend faculty meetings focused on student welfare. She could record her offenses on her phone while planning her wedding. She could manipulate a vulnerable teenager while portraying herself as an exemplary educator. This degree of psychological compartmentalization indicates a profound absence of empathy and a sophisticated grasp of how to manipulate others. These traits do not belong to someone who simply made a mistake or found themselves in an inappropriate relationship. The diary entries discovered on Formella's phone disclose her authentic mindset. Even after being apprehended, she perceived herself as the victim. She attributed the destruction of her life and marriage to the child. There was a complete absence of genuine remorse for the trauma she had caused. Dr. Chen notes that the most perilous predators are frequently those who can uphold a favorable public persona while engaging in atrocious acts in private. They leverage their reputation and perceived trustworthiness to gain access to victims and divert suspicion. This elucidates how Formella managed to exploit her victim for nearly 2 years without being detected. Parents, colleagues, and administrators regarded her as a committed teacher who exceeded expectations for her students. They misconstrued her additional attention towards the victim as professional commitment rather than predatory grooming. The case further illustrates how female predators manipulate gender stereotypes to their advantage. Society is generally less inclined to perceive women as potential sexual predators, which provides them with a shield to operate. When allegations do surface, there is often doubt regarding whether a woman could genuinely commit such offenses. Formella attempted to leverage these stereotypes in her defense, depicting herself as the victim of a teenage boy's advances. This tactic is predicated on the belief that individuals will find it more plausible that a child pursued an adult than that a trusted female educator systematically exploited her student. However, the evidence in Formella's case was irrefutable. The text messages, diary entries, and documented behavioral patterns left no ambiguity regarding who was the predator and who was the victim. What renders female predators like Formella particularly hazardous is their capacity to conceal themselves in plain sight. They utilize positions of trust and authority to gain access to victims, and they exploit societal assumptions about women and caregiving to evade detection. The shocking revelation that Christina Formella had been systematically abusing a student for nearly 2 years sent shockwaves throughout the Downers Grove community, affecting not only the immediate victim and his family, but also the wider community. Parents who had entrusted their children to Formella's care were compelled to face a horrifying reality. The teacher they had lauded and recommended was, in fact, a predator concealed in plain sight. "I recommended her to other parents," stated Jennifer Morrison, whose daughter had been been part of Formella's special education program. I told them how wonderful she was with struggling kids. Now I wonder what I missed. What signs were there that I didn't see? This sense of guilt and self-doubt permeated the entire school community. Teachers began to question whether they had overlooked any warning signs. Administrators took a closer look at their supervision and screening procedures. Parents engaged in difficult discussions with their children regarding trusted adults who might not be reliable. The case compelled the community to confront uncomfortable truths about the operations of predators and how institutions can inadvertently facilitate abuse. Formella had not been an outsider viewed with suspicion. She had been a respected member of the educational team who had gained trust and admiration through years of seemingly dedicated service. Community High School District 99 faced intense scrutiny regarding how Formella had managed to abuse a student for such an extended period without detection. Parents demanded clarity on supervision protocols, background screening processes, and policies governing teacher-student communications. The district's response unveiled systemic weaknesses that extended beyond a single predatory teacher. Formella had been able to arrange private tutoring sessions with minimal oversight. She had been texting students from her personal phone without administrative awareness. She had been remaining after school with individual students without adhering to proper supervision protocols. The system failed that child, remarked parent advocate Maria Santos during a heated school board meeting. We placed our trust in the school to safeguard our children, yet they allowed a predator unrestricted access to impressionable students. In light of this case, the district enacted new policies. These include mandatory supervision for all after-school tutoring, limitations on communication between teachers and students, and improved background screening processes. However, numerous parents believed these actions were insufficient and came too late. The incident also ignited wider discussions regarding society's approach to identifying and addressing female predators. Unlike their male counterparts, who are frequently met with immediate suspicion, female predators such as Fella can evade detection for years due to their failure to conform to the conventional image of a sex offender. It is essential to recognize that predators can emerge from any background, stated Dr. Michael Torres, a child safety expert who addressed community forums after Formella's arrest. Children are not shielded from abuse by gender, profession, or reputation. Only vigilance and appropriate safeguards can provide protection. The community's reaction further underscored the necessity of believing and supporting abuse victims. The overwhelming backing for Fella's victim and his family conveyed a strong message that the community would not accept the victim-blaming tactics often employed by predators and their supporters. However, the subsequent developments in the legal proceedings would challenge that community support and expose the persistent difficulties in prosecuting female predators. June 16, 2025. One day prior to confronting her expanded charges in court, Christina Formella made a choice that astonished no one who had been monitoring her case. She officially resigned from her teaching role and relinquished her teaching license. The damage to her reputation and career was already beyond repair. The legal proceedings unveiled the robustness of the prosecution's case against Formella. The evidence was insurmountable. Text messages documenting the abuse, diary entries that disclosed her mindset, witness testimonies regarding her conduct, and the victim's comprehensive account of the systematic abuse he had suffered were all presented. Prosecutor Jacqueline McAdmrew meticulously constructed her case, showcasing evidence that illustrated not only what Formella had committed, but also how she had orchestrated and concealed her offenses. The prosecution's approach aimed to establish that this was not merely a case of poor judgment or an inappropriate relationship. It was systematic child sexual abuse perpetrated by a calculating predator. The defense encountered an almost insurmountable challenge. Given the overwhelming evidence of guilt, their strategy concentrated on mitigation rather than denial. They depicted Formella as an individual who had committed grave errors, but was not the monster the prosecution portrayed. This approach was compromised by Formella's own statements and actions, her attempts to shift blame onto the victim, her absence of genuine remorse, and her ongoing public display displays of defiance complicated efforts to present her as someone worthy of leniency. The case also underscored the disparities in the prosecution of female predators compared to their male counterparts. While male educators who abuse students frequently face immediate condemnation and severe penalties, female predators occasionally benefit from societal perceptions regarding women and sexuality. Nevertheless, the Formella case signified a transformation in this dynamic. Prosecutors pursued the maximum sentence of up to 60 years in prison, conveying a clear message that gender would not serve as a mitigating factor in child sexual abuse cases. The law does not differentiate between male and female predators. Prosecutor McAndrew remarked, "A child victim is entitled to justice irrespective of the gender of their abuser." This case garnered national interest from legal professionals who viewed it as a possible precedent for the prosecution of female offenders in the future. The extensive charges and assertive prosecution approach indicated that the justice system was addressing female-perpetrated abuse with the same seriousness as that of male-perpetrated abuse. However, the legal proceedings also brought to light the persistent trauma faced by the victim and his family. Court appearances, the presentation of evidence, and media coverage meant that the abuse was being publicly relitigated, compelling the victim to repeatedly confront his trauma. The victim impact statements from the family outlined the lasting effects of Formella's offenses, including therapy expenses, academic difficulties, trust issues, and the disruption of their entire family dynamic. They urged the court to take into account not only the immediate damage inflicted by the abuse, but also the enduring repercussions the victim would endure. As the case approached its conclusion, the community observed closely to determine whether the justice system would hold her fully accountable for her actions, or if her gender and professional standing would lead to a more lenient verdict. While Christina Formella's case was progressing through the legal system, it simultaneously gained significant traction across social media platforms, highlighting both the influence and the challenges associated with viral justice. The case turned into a sensation on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit, amassing millions of views, shares, and comments. However, in contrast to earlier cases involving female teachers and male students, the online conversation predominantly centered on the criminality of Formella's actions rather than romanticizing the relationship. TikTok user Abby Blabby inadvertently became a key figure in the case's viral dissemination when her videos depicting Formella arriving at court hand in hand with her husband attracted substantial engagement. The footage incited outrage and disbelief, with viewers expressing shock at Formella's apparent lack of remorse and her husband's unwavering support. "She's walking into court for child abuse charges like she's going to a movie premiere," remarked one viewer. "Where's the shame? Where's the remorse?" The imagery of Formella's self-assured court appearances evolved into a representation of her perceived arrogance and absence of accountability. Social media users juxtaposed her demeanor with that of typical defendants confronting serious criminal charges, observing her evident comfort and defiance. Twitter personality Colin Rugg's viral thread regarding the case received hundreds of thousands of engagements, igniting widespread discourse about female offenders and disparities in sentencing. The thread emerged as a focal point for advocates seeking equitable treatment of male and female predators within the justice system. Reddit communities thoroughly examined the case across various subreddits, with users analyzing legal strategies, evidence disclosure, and the psychological dimensions of female predators. The discussions were notably more nuanced and less sensationalized than the usual social media portrayals of criminal cases. Legal analysis discussions centered on the possible maximum sentence of 60 years, with numerous users observing that this marked a considerable deviation from the usual sentences in cases of female teacher abuse. The extensive charges and vigorous prosecution were interpreted as indicators of evolving perspectives on female offenders. Additionally, the case sparked considerable dialogue within true crime circles, where content creators examined Formella's grooming strategies, psychological profile, and the institutional institutional shortcomings that facilitated her misconduct. These discussions contributed to educating audiences on the operational methods of predators and the warning signs to be vigilant about. The case sustained extensive media attention across various news cycles, from the initial arrest to the escalation of charges. The viral aspect of the case served both beneficial and detrimental purposes. On the positive side, it informed the public about female predators and the grave implications of teacher-student abuse. It also illustrated that society was increasingly unwilling to romanticize these relationships or excuse female offenders. Conversely, the viral coverage occasionally eclipsed the victim's experience, transforming his trauma into a form of entertainment. The emphasis on Formella's court appearances and social media activity risked sensationalizing the case instead of concentrating on the serious offenses she committed. Furthermore, the case underscored the dual nature of social media justice. While the online focus helped guarantee that the case received appropriate examination and resources, it also imposed pressure for a swift resolution and severe punishment that did not always correspond with principles of due process. Most significantly, the viral attention surrounding the FMLA case signified a cultural transformation in society's perception of female predators. One of the most unsettling elements of the Christina Formella case was the involvement of her husband, Michael, whose steadfast public endorsement of his wife raised disconcerting questions regarding complicity, denial, and the mindset of those who support offenders. Michael Formella wed Christina in August 2024 while she was actively engaged in the abuse of her student victim. The wedding photographs depict a joyful couple commemorating their love and commitment to one another. However, what they fail to reveal is that the bride was concurrently involved in a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old child. When investigators questioned Michael following his wife's arrest, he asserted that he was unaware of the victim's identity beyond his role as a soccer player. This situation prompts troubling inquiries. Was Michael genuinely ignorant of his wife's offenses, or did he deliberately choose to ignore the warning signs? The evidence indicates that Christina was exceptionally adept at compartmentalizing her existence and misleading those nearest to her. She rationalized late nights at school as a commitment to assisting struggling students. She trivialized text messages from students as part of her professional duties. She upheld the illusion of a devoted educator and caring spouse while systematically abusing a child. Nevertheless, Michael's ongoing public endorsement of Christina after her arrest and throughout the legal proceedings incited outrage and disbelief. At each court appearance, he remained by her side, holding her hand and presenting a united front against the allegations. This public display of loyalty conveyed a troubling message to the community and to other potential victims. It implied that, even when confronted with compelling evidence of child sexual abuse, some individuals will prioritize their personal relationships over the safeguarding of children. His support for her is enabling behavior, stated Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a child trauma specialist. It conveys the notion that preserving a marriage holds greater significance than recognizing the harm inflicted upon a child victim. The psychology of individuals who support predators is intricate and concerning. Some truly do not accept the allegations despite the evidence presented. Others recognize the offenses but downplay their seriousness or attribute blame to outside influences. Additionally, some prioritize their own emotional needs over the well-being of the victims. Michael's actions also underscored the secondary trauma faced by the families of predators. Discovering that a loved one has committed atrocious acts leads to its own psychological turmoil. Some individuals react by pursuing truth and accountability, while others resort to denial and defensive allegiance. The public nature of Michael's endorsement of Christina became a component of the viral phenomenon linked to the case. Users on social media voiced their outrage at his apparent apathy towards his wife's offenses and his seeming disregard for her victim. One Twitter user remarked, "Imagine being that child's parents and witnessing the predator's husband standing beside her in court. It feels like a second victimization." The case prompted broader inquiries regarding the responsibilities of those associated with predators. Are spouses, family members, and friends obligated to report suspicious activities? How do we reconcile loyalty to loved ones with the protection of potential victims? Legal experts pointed out that Michael was not charged with any crimes related to his wife's abuse, indicating that investigators found no evidence of his awareness or involvement. Nevertheless, his public backing of Christina continued to spark controversy and debate regarding the ethics of supporting someone accused of child sexual abuse. The husband's predicament in the Fella case became emblematic of how the crimes of predators impact entire communities and raise challenging questions about loyalty, accountability, and moral obligation. Just when it seemed impossible for the revelations about Christina Formella's actions to get any worse, investigators uncovered deeper, systemic failures that had allowed her misconduct to thrive. What they found next stunned the educational community and sparked urgent questions about how schools safeguard or fail to safeguard their most vulnerable students from predatory employees. Formella had been employed by Community High School District 99 since 2020, working for 5 years with students who struggled academically, socially, and emotionally. These children, already facing learning challenges, were highly vulnerable and less likely to be believed if they reported inappropriate behavior. In other words, they were the kind of students a predator could easily exploit. Despite this, the district's background checks revealed nothing concerning. Formella earned her teaching license in 2017 and passed all screenings without issue. On the surface, she was the ideal candidate, but the systems meant to monitor her once she was hired were full of dangerous gaps. She managed to schedule private tutoring sessions with little oversight, even though district rules technically required supervision for after-school interactions. Those policies, however, were inconsistently enforced. Formella frequently remained alone with students, without the safeguards that should have been in place. She also communicated with students through her personal phone, bypassing administrative oversight. While the district had policies about teacher-student messaging, those guidelines were unclear, poorly enforced, and rarely checked. This allowed her to maintain long-term private conversations with her victim for nearly 2 years. In her role within special education services, she had access to sensitive information about students' home lives and emotional struggles. Knowledge she used to pinpoint those who were least likely to report abuse. She weaponized her professional authority to identify and groom her victim. When the district finally responded to the crisis, its actions raised even more concerns. Early statements appeared designed to protect the district's image rather than acknowledge the organizational failures that had allowed the abuse to go unnoticed. Parents were forced to demand answers and accountability instead of receiving them voluntarily. They cared more about their legal risk than about the child who was harmed, said parent advocate Maria Santos. That says everything about where their priorities were. The case highlighted widespread problems within educational systems nationwide. Many districts have policies in writing but lack the training, enforcement, and commitment needed to apply them effectively. Staff members often struggle to recognize signs of grooming, or they hesitate to report concerns about co-workers. In special education settings, these failures are even more troubling. Students with disabilities are at increased risk because they may not fully understand boundaries or may struggle to communicate what happened. Schools have an even greater responsibility to protect these students, a responsibility District 99 failed to uphold. Formella's dual role as teacher and coach created additional blind spots. Coaching often involves closer physical proximity and stronger emotional bonds than typical classroom interactions, giving predators more opportunities to hide inappropriate behavior. Unfortunately, the district's oversight of coaching activities was even weaker than its classroom supervision. Investigators also learned that some staff had noticed Formella giving unusual attention to certain students but never reported it. This bystander pattern is common in institutional abuse cases, where employees assume someone else will act or fear misjudging the situation. As Dr. Patricia Williams, an expert in institutional child protection, explained, "We train teachers to spot signs of abuse at home, but we rarely teach them how to recognize predatory behavior in fellow staff members. That's a serious vulnerability and predators know it." Following public outrage, the district introduced new measures, required supervision for all after-school programs, stricter rules about teacher-student communication, improved background screenings, and reporting misconduct. But critics argued these changes came far too late and failed to address the deeper cultural issues that had allowed the abuse to happen in the first place. As the Christina Formella case neared its conclusion, the community watched closely, hoping the justice system would finally bring the accountability the victim and his family had been fighting for. Formella faced 55 felony charges, a staggering list that carried a maximum possible sentence of 60 years. It was one of the most forceful legal actions taken against a female offender in years. Prosecutor Jacqueline McAndrew assembled a case so extensive and airtight that it left virtually no room for alternative interpretations. Every piece of evidence pointed unmistakably to deliberate, calculated abuse. The prosecution's evidence was overwhelming. Explicit text messages chronicling the assaults, digital journal entries revealing her manipulative thinking, witness accounts describing grooming patterns, and the victim's heartbreaking, consistent testimony. Together, these details dismantled any suggestion that this was a boundary violation or lapse in judgment. It was premeditated exploitation carried out by someone who understood exactly what she was doing. With the evidence stacked against them, Formella's defense team shifted to damage control. Rather than deny her actions, they attempted to soften the perception of her character and argue for reduced punishment. But even this approach faltered as Formella's own behavior repeatedly contradicted any claims of remorse. Throughout the investigation, she made attempts to shift blame onto the child, portraying herself as the real victim. Her personal diary entries, particularly those accusing the child of ruining her life, made it clear she lacked insight into the harm she inflicted. The victim impact statements submitted to the court were devastating. They explained how the abuse had shaken the boy's emotional stability, disrupted his academics, and left him wrestling with trauma that would likely shadow him for years. His family described the collapse of their trust in schools and adults who were supposed to protect him. "She didn't just hurt my son," his mother wrote. "She stole his innocence, his trust, and his sense of safety. Those pieces of him may never fully return." The case quickly drew national interest as experts and child protection advocates saw it as a turning point in how female offenders are prosecuted. Historically, female-perpetrated abuse has often been minimized or treated differently. But this case showed a clear shift toward equal accountability. "This sends a powerful message," said Dr. Michael Torres, a leading child safety specialist. "Gender does not lessen the seriousness of child sexual abuse. A predator is a predator." As the court moved into the sentencing phase, the real test emerged. Would the punishment reflect the severity of the crimes, or would societal biases favoring female defendants resurface? Formella's professional background and gender had protected offenders in similar cases before, leading to lighter sentences than their male counterparts. The community waited anxiously, aware that the court's decision would signal how seriously society intends to treat predators of all genders, especially those entrusted with children. The Christina Formella case evolved far beyond a routine criminal trial. It became a national flashpoint that forced people to confront deeply rooted misconceptions about female predators, institutional negligence, and the safety of vulnerable children. For years, society had struggled to accept that women could be sexual offenders. Female teachers involved with male students were often portrayed as scandals rather than crimes, and the harm inflicted on victims was frequently minimized. Formella's actions destroyed that dangerous narrative. The evidence exposed a deliberate, manipulative predator who hid behind professionalism while systematically grooming and abusing a child who trusted her. Nothing about her behavior resembled the romanticized myths often associated with female offenders. Her actions were exploitative, intentional, and deeply damaging. As the case spread online, it educated millions about how female predators typically operate. Instead of brute force, many use emotional manipulation, trust, and caretaking roles to weave themselves into a child's life. They exploit the assumption that women are naturally nurturing to gain access to victims and escape suspicion, making their crimes harder to detect. The case also underscored the heightened vulnerability of students with learning disabilities. These children often struggle socially, seek adult approval, and may have difficulty recognizing or reporting abuse. Formella leveraged these vulnerabilities with precision. Predators intentionally target students who are less likely to speak out, not, and even less likely to be believed if they do. This reality pushed schools and communities to confront how easily children with disabilities can be overlooked, underestimated, or unprotected. Institutional failures revealed during the investigation sparked widespread debate about child safety in schools. It became clear that policies written in handbooks are meaningless without consistent enforcement, proper training, and real accountability. Administrators, lawmakers, and child welfare groups began re-evaluating the systems in place to prevent abuse. In several jurisdictions, Formella's case prompted revisions to background check requirements, closer supervision of after-school interactions, and new guidelines for identifying grooming behavior. Legally, the prosecution set a powerful precedent. The comprehensive list of charges and the possibility of a decades-long sentence signaled a major shift in how the justice system treats female-perpetrated abuse. The message was unmistakable. Gender would no longer serve as a shield from consequences. Experts noted that the case helped recalibrate the legal conversation, proving that the trauma of male victims is equally serious and deserving of justice. Culturally, the case shaped how the public talks about sexual abuse. Instead of focusing on the offender's personal struggles or excuses, the narrative centered on the victim's suffering and the long-term harm inflicted. This marked a significant change in public perception. Social media amplified this shift. Millions engaged in discussions that were more informed, nuanced, and survivor-centered than the sensationalized coverage typically surrounding teacher-student abuse. Formella's case quickly became a benchmark for other prosecutions involving female predators. Advocates and attorneys referenced it as a model for thorough investigations, transparent reporting, and strong sentencing recommendations. It set a new expectation that institutions and courts must treat all predators regardless of gender with equal seriousness. Most importantly, the case offered validation to countless survivors of female-perpetrated abuse who had been dismissed or misunderstood for years. By recognizing the full gravity of Formella's actions and prioritizing the victim's trauma, society sent a long-overdue message. Every victim deserves justice, and every predator must be held accountable, no matter who they are. The Christina Formella case became a turning point in how communities understand, prevent, and respond to predatory behavior in schools. What happened in this Illinois district exposed systemic failures that extend far beyond one campus, forcing educators and institutions nationwide to re-examine their assumptions. The first major lesson was unmistakable. Predators do not come with a predictable profile. Formella appeared friendly, competent, and deeply committed to her job. She had excellent evaluations, clean background checks, and the confidence of colleagues and parents. Yet these qualities didn't shield students, they helped mask her abuse. Institutions must move away from the false belief that danger is obvious and instead design child protection policies that assume risk can come from anyone. Another critical revelation was the necessity of consistent supervision. Formella's abuse went undetected for nearly 2 years because she frequently had unsupervised access to her victim during tutoring and coaching sessions. While policies requiring supervision technically existed, they were not reliably followed. Effective child safety demands more than paperwork. It requires real-world enforcement, routine oversight, and a culture where compliance is non-negotiable. Schools must prioritize student safety above convenience, long-standing habits, or personal relationships. The grooming techniques revealed during the investigation further emphasized the need for widespread education about how abusers operate. Formella followed a classic pattern, selecting a vulnerable student, building emotional dependence, slowly eroding boundaries, and isolating the child from support. Parents, educators, and students must be taught these signs so early warning behaviors are recognized and reported. This education needs to be thoughtful and age-appropriate, but also honest enough to prepare communities for real-world dangers. The case also spotlighted the heightened risks faced by students with learning disabilities. These children may struggle to articulate discomfort, understand boundaries, or advocate for themselves. Their vulnerabilities demand additional institutional safeguards, specialized staff training, and heightened awareness. When schools fail to account for these needs, they leave already at-risk students even more exposed. The district's initial reaction to the scandal further demonstrated the damage that occurs when institutions prioritize reputation over truth. Attempts to protect the school's image, delayed accountability, empathy and eroded community trust. Moving forward, organizations must respond to abuse with transparency, responsibility, and immediate corrective action. Honest acknowledgement of failure is essential for healing and reform. The role of bystanders emerged as another critical factor. Investigators learned that several staff members had observed concerning behavior from Feller but chose not to report it. Whether due to uncertainty, fear, or misplaced trust, their silence allowed the abuse to continue. Schools must cultivate environments where reporting concerns is both expected and supported, not seen as meddling or disloyalty. Support for victims and their families also proved essential. The trauma caused by Feller's actions rippled far beyond the immediate victim. His parents, classmates, and even teachers were affected. Institutions must have accessible, compassionate support services ready whenever abuse cases arise. Children and families cannot be expected to navigate such devastation alone. The aggressive prosecution of Feller demonstrated the importance of addressing all forms of abuse fully and fairly. The charges and the possibility of a severe sentence sent a clear message that gender does not minimize the seriousness of sexual exploitation. The justice system's approach signaled a growing recognition that female-perpetrated abuse must be treated with the same gravity as any similar crime. Finally, the case highlighted both the advantages and risks of social media. Viral coverage kept public pressure on the district and ensured the investigation received attention. However, it also threatened to turn the victim's suffering into sensational content. Society must balance awareness with respect, ensuring that the pursuit of justice never devolves into exploitation. Ultimately, the lessons from the Feller case must inform future policy. Schools and youth-serving organizations need comprehensive background checks, continuous monitoring, strict supervision for all adult-child interactions, regular training on recognizing grooming behavior, clear rules around communication, and a foundational culture that values child safety above institutional image. Only then can communities hope to prevent similar tragedies and protect every child in their care. The story of Christina Formella is a chilling reminder that evil has no gender, no single appearance, and no predictable shape. Make sure to subscribe to Mr. Owl and share this video. More people need to understand that predators can look ordinary, friendly, or even trustworthy. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. After hearing this case, what warning signs would you be more alert to? This tragedy underscores a harsh truth: protecting children requires constant awareness, strong safeguards, and the willingness to confront the darker corners of human behavior. When institutions grow complacent, the consequences are measured in damaged childhoods and broken trust. While nothing can reverse the harm Christina Feller inflicted, the lessons from her case can guide us toward preventing future victims. The real challenge is whether society will take those lessons seriously before more children fall prey to predators hiding in plain sight. The fight to protect kids from people like Christina Formella is far from over. The victims deserve nothing less than our full dedication to building a world where no child experiences the trauma her victim endured. That dedication has to show up in our policies, our leadership, and our willingness to face the uncomfortable reality that danger sometimes comes from those we trust most.